way overhyped. They're just not good. I don't understand why people are obsessed with these. These are books that have over 20,000 ratings on Goodreads, and they just weren't good. They just weren't good. I don't usually do negative content on my channel, but I really did want to do a follow-up. If I was going to do books that had under 20,000 ratings that were really good, I really wanted to do the counterpart. I felt like it'd be missing not to do it. I'm going to try not to be too harsh. Listen, reading is completely subjective. If I'm saying things about these books, if you like them, I'm so happy for you, and I'm happy those books worked for you. Clearly they worked for a lot of people because they're very popular. I just didn't like them. So please don't get in these comments and like freak out at me. So the first one is The Witch Collector by Carissa Weeks. Now, I will first say I did read this book when I wasn't in a fantasy romance mood, but I honestly don't think my opinion would change because I think try to read this twice. This is an enemies to lovers fantasy romance. It's been around for a while. Our heroine knows the witch collector is coming. He comes, I believe, every year to collect a witch, and he tries to collect, I think, the most powerful one. She's decided that this is the year that she is going to go after him. She wants to free her sister, and she wants to take revenge on the witch collector. Her mother kind of sees through some of her actions and warns her not to do it. She ends up going with the witch collector, and things go from there. When I did read it, I just was feeling like, okay. Like, it didn't feel like anything special was happening. It didn't feel like anything unique. It felt very cookie cutter fantasy romance. I think I also personally did not mesh with the writing style for this one. And you will see that is something that is often why I don't like books. It's a personal thing, whether a writing style works for you or not. It doesn't mean it's not a good writing style. Sometimes the writing is not good though. That happens too. That's not what I'm talking about for this one. The next one here is very popular, and it's by a very popular fantasy romance author. She's done YA and adult, and that is Carrie Maniscalco, Throne of the Fallen. This book is a historical fae fantasy romance. It is set during the Regency era. Each book in this series follows a different king of hell, demon of hell, or prince of hell, or something. In this one, our heroine is a painter, and she's painting look-alike paintings to try to sell for money. The demon king is Envy. This was a case of the writing for me. I will say, it almost felt like the writing style was reaching for something and it just wasn't grasping it. Like, it was trying to sound flowery and beautiful, but in fact it wasn't very grammatically correct, and it annoyed me. I think I felt like there was a lot of passive voice in it. It was just what a professor might say, like, was poor writing. Technically, the writing was not good from a technical standpoint, but it was trying really hard, and that specifically bugged me. While her writing clearly works for a lot of people, and that's great and that's wonderful, I personally was bothered by the amount of passive voice, and I was bothered by some of the grammatical errors, I'll just say. Okay, so the next one is a book that I was really upset because I bought it and the sequel. It's a duology. I bought them both without reading either, obviously, and then I had to unhaul both, and that was really upsetting to me. This is For the Wolf by Hannah Witten. This one is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, maybe some inspiration from Red Riding Hood as well. This one felt like it was kind of similar to like Spinning Silver or The Bear and the Nightingale, a kind of historical fantasy romance, and that's kind of what I was expecting from it. But what I got from it was more KU fantasy romance. I felt like the writing styles, like it was a little bit of both, and it wasn't really working for me. Obviously, it wasn't working for me. I DNF'd this one. I think I got pretty far into it too. And I DNF'd it because of the writing style. I didn't like the writing style. I also felt like there was a lack of focus. I wasn't driven to know what was happening for what it was supposed to be. I was just expecting more atmosphere, and I didn't get enough atmosphere from the writing style. Maybe it should have been marketed differently. I don't know. I just didn't like it. Okay, next is one that's gonna really, really upset a lot of people. This is a very unpopular opinion, okay? This is not an opinion that people are gonna like. People are gonna hate me for this, actually. I already know it. I'm really stressed out. I don't want to say it. Sarah J. Maas, Heir of Fire.
You didn't hear from me.
So, Heir of Fire by Sarah J. Maas. This is the third book in the Throne of Glass series. Most people say when you go into the series, read book 1 and 2. They're very YA, and this is YA series. And then book 3, things will pick up and feel more adult, and it'll get good or whatnot. I think I got maybe halfway through of Heir of Fire, and it didn't get good. This series is not for me. What I don't think a lot of people realize is if you've read a good amount of fantasy romance, and then you go back to try to read original YA fantasy romance that kind of started a lot of these trends, it's gonna feel repetitive and like not as good as how some other people are doing these things now. Just like when you're going back and reading classics and you're like, this is boring. It's a classic because it did something no one had ever done before. Okay? That's how I view Throne of Glass. It's a classic for a reason. If you're talking about like fantasy romance, that doesn't mean it's good. That's just my opinion. Okay, guys. I felt like I've seen a lot of these things done better. I felt like the writing was meh. I didn't really care about the heroine. When the hero was introduced in book 3, I was like, cool. So yeah, this book and the series definitely wasn't made for me. Someone who is in her mid-30s, who has read tons of fantasy romance, going back and reading a YA fantasy romance that was written, what, like 10 years ago at least? No, it's just not for me. Okay, the next is a series that I actually put a lot of effort in. I did a whole read-along with a bunch of my friends for JLA's From Blood and Ash series. And this was The War of Two Queens, which I think was the 4th book in that series. I think we also read the other sequel, the prequel series too. And at this point, I DNF'd. So this was like the 5th book I had read so far in Jennifer L. Armentrout's world here. And at this point, I realized that it wasn't going to work for me. And so I'm going to say like this whole world is way overhyped. I don't know how it gets so much hype, how so many people love it. It is exceedingly convoluted. A lot of it doesn't make sense. You can tell she's just making shit up on the fly. Like she didn't plan any of this out. Her writing style is good. The problem is in terms of I like the flowery aspect of her writing style, but what I don't like is the repetitive nature where she will play a scene and then she'll replay that scene but with different characters talking about it. It just is so many extra pages that are unnecessary, and then it's still confusing because she's not doing the world building well. I mean, I don't even know how she gets this published, to be honest. Like, I'm gonna just say it. It's bad. Like, this is bad. It's bad writing. It's not good. They only publish it because it makes money still, and I don't even know how it does that. It's just not good. There was one good book in that series. It was the 2nd book, and it was good only because vibes. It still had all those same problems, but it worked. It just didn't work anymore. The prequel series is just like a cookie cutter of the 1st series from Blood and Ash, just with 2 different characters that are basically the same characters. And it's kind of the same thing, but also just as convoluted and weird. Not good. Not good. The next is another kind of paranormal fantasy romance, and that's Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahorn. Now, is this YA? I think this is YA, but it's following characters that are kind of more towards the adult side of things, so it's kind of confusing in that way. I thought this was a watered down book, and not because it was YA. I've read YA books that weren't watered down. I don't think it was as watered down as Throne of Glass. This is about a witch and a witch hunter, and like I said, this is a historical setting. I think it might take place around the French Revolution. I could be wrong there. And it's about a witch and a witch hunter. I read the whole book. This one I read, and the witch hunter, not cute. Like, he wasn't cute. I don't understand why he was the hero, because he was just not cute. I didn't think the heroine was all that cool. Like, she was fine. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like the plot. I didn't like the writing. So for this one, it's definitely like the whole kit and caboodle. At the time, I gave it 3 stars. This was like years ago. Looking back, it was definitely not a 3-star. You know what I'm saying? There's so many better witch books than this one. Another one that I highly recommend you do not read. I'm shocked by the amount of Goodreads ratings on here. Like, I'm shocked. That's Fighting Destiny by Amelia Hutchins. This book is a dark fantasy romance about a fae and a witch. His powers are that he can SA someone by forcing those feelings on them through his magical abilities. And he does that to the heroine. And it happens constantly. And it's just basically an abusive relationship. It's bad. It's very problematic. It's bad. It's not okay. I've read dark fantasy romance. I've read dark romance. Yeah. This was just too much for me personally. Okay, this was too much for me personally. You know what? If that's your thing, that's good for you. I'm not here to like shame anyone's yum-yums or whatever. But this is just not for me. Please know going in, it's rampant with SA between the hero and the heroine, him doing it to her. This other one, the next one is Pestilence by Laura Thalassa, and this is 100% a writing style issue for me. At the time I gave it 3 stars, looking back 2.5. At the time I gave War, the second book in the series, 2.5 stars. Looking back, it's like a 1. This is about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and each book follows one of the 4 horsemen. They have a romance with a human woman. So the first one is Pestilence. 100% this is a writing style issue. I've never given any of her books 5 stars. I don't ever plan on reading a Laura Thalassa book again because I don't like her writing. And that is 100% a personal thing. I have friends that have really loved this series. I have people that I have actually similar taste to love this series. And so, like, I understand it's a writing style thing. I also know people that also, like, they don't mesh with her writing. So I think it's just one of those things, you either, like, love her or hate her. And yeah, it doesn't work for me. The premise was fine. Like, I didn't think it was too dark or too light. I did think it was a little bit too long, to be honest. I thought that, especially War, she could have cut 200 pages out of War. But this was mostly a writing style thing. I am surprised it got so popular because there are so many other fantasy romance books that I just think did similar concepts better. And finally, we have a book that I firmly detest, and that is The Never King by Nikki St. Crow. This book is awful. I mean, I don't think anyone that likes this book thinks it's like deserves a Pulitzer Prize, okay? This is a dark YA fantasy romance that is a Peter Pan retelling. But it has some kinks in it that are not my personal favorite, okay? There's some things in here that I'm not a fan of. I also thought the plot, the world building and everything, like it was like holding on by a thread, and that thread was just smut. And that's totally my jam sometimes. The problem was I didn't like the smut. So because I didn't like the smut, everything else was kind of popping out at me because that's really the only point of the book. So if that doesn't work, then you're noticing all the other plot holes and issues and things like that. So because of that, I didn't like it. And I really, really didn't like this book. It's very popular and I get it. Like I've liked other books that I'm sure had the same like world building and plot hole issues, but like they were held together by smut that I really like. And so I gave them like 4 stars. So I think I get why this is popular. Like if you like that smut, like if that smut is your jam, then you're gonna like it. So I get it. That's fine. Do I think it's overhyped? I do, honestly. Like all of the books in this list, I'm like, I just can think of other books that did it better. I hope you guys like this video. I feel really weird doing negative content. Like I said, I wanted to do a follow-up. I wanted to do something that covered the other side, the other aspect of my 20K like under or overrated thing. I don't ever want to yuck someone's yum. I know everyone has different tastes, different writing style preferences, all of that jazz. Personally, for me, these books are overrated. If you like them, I'm super happy for you though. If you like this video, give it a like, comment down below. Please don't argue with me, but you can tell me where you agree, where you disagree with. Just don't be mean. Until next time, fellow readers, keep reading and living your best life. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away.